Sky Moore comes away with the second best landing spot. I can't call it better than the Green Bay Packers, but this is a wide receiver that checks every single box. We're going to dive in depth with Sky Moore, talk about how he fits in on this offense. But first things first, I got to give an apology. I have to be completely transparent with everybody watching this. Back, I believe, in either January or February, a couple months ago, probably about 100 days ago, I came out and I said Sky Moore was an overrated player. He was being drafted drastically ahead of Justin Ross, Wan'Dale Robinson, and I was saying, you know what? This is a wide receiver that's being overvalued. I see him in the similar tier as a Justin Ross and a Wan'Dale Robinson and a John Mechie. We had all there. But as the offseason progressed, as we developed our wide receiver model to figure out exactly what really does matter, predicting success at the next level, Sky Moore, he jumps off the page. And on top of this, my hesitation with Sky Moore was flat out wrong. I previously said at the beginning of this offseason that if you look at the production profile for Sky Moore and we go back to his 2020 season, it was alarming at Western Michigan. Now, let me just pull up Sky Moore's actual season-to-season performance so I can dive into 2020 at Western Michigan and why I was initially worried, and I think that you don't necessarily have to be. So if you go to that 2020 Western Michigan season, you're going to see that there is one other wide receiver that we are familiar with on this roster. You have D'Wayne Eskridge here. And with D'Wayne Eskridge, I mean, he actually went out of his way and dominated Sky Moore. I mean, D'Wayne Eskridge had 768 receiving yards and Sky Moore had 388. So we are looking at the fact that D'Wayne Eskridge pretty much doubled Sky Moore's production. And I was ignorant enough to say, hell, if you want Sky Moore, just go trade for D'Wayne Eskridge at a fifth of the price and you're going to get yourself a comparable player. Well, this was wrong for a multitude of reasons. Reason one being that D'Wayne Eskridge was a fifth-year senior. D'Wayne Eskridge was 23 years old this season, whereas Sky Moore was a true sophomore at 19. Okay, so that already throws this out the window where D'Wayne Eskridge, he has an extra 3 years to just continuously grind practices there at Western Michigan and really implement himself in that offense. And also, it was way too small of a sample size to be calling hard lines on production. Like, it's way too small of a sample size to be coming away with hard takes such as D'Wayne Eskridge is as talented as Sky Moore, because Sky Moore only played 5 games. So what we need to look at is we need to look at the fact that Sky Moore, the second he goes to Western Michigan, he breaks out as a true freshman. Then you have the season with D'Wayne Eskridge where Sky Moore is still easily the wide receiver 2 on this team, had a very large role. It was a small sample, but this past season, this is what you need to see. Sky Moore, over 100 receiving yards a game, almost 1,300 receiving yards in this offense, double-digit touchdowns, over 1,300 yards from scrimmage in 12 games played. And of course, this is an offense that didn't necessarily jump off the page if you're talking about just what they had in terms of the overall passing volume. It was Western Michigan. So if we're talking about a percentage basis that Sky Moore accounted for here at Western Michigan, he does pop off the page. He had 42.55% of the passing yards on a per game basis his final season there. He declares early for the NFL draft. He ran a 4.41. Obviously, you're going to hear the people that are commentating from just national media talking about his hand size because that's very, very easy to pull up. Obviously, the biggest hands in this year's NFL draft. I'm more excited about the profile that he has. And on top of this, with Sky Moore, going to a great landing spot. I still think Juju Smith-Schuster plays in the slot. You're going to have Marquez Valdes-Scantling stretching the field, trying to draw safety attention. And Sky Moore is most likely going to be playing as the X wide receiver on the boundaries here. But Sky Moore can play all over. Sky Moore could be that field stretching option. Sky Moore could slide over to the slot. Juju Smith-Schuster is only on a 1-year deal. So if you're looking at Sky Moore's versatility in this offense, which is exactly what they are lacking without Tyreek Hill, I think you can get very, very excited. And let's go over to our rankings right now. Let's try to figure out where we should be taking Sky Moore among wide receivers. And you know what I can actually do is I can pull up a a mock draft that we had from this morning, and we can look at where Sky Moore went and where I think he should potentially go from here on out. So Sky Moore in this draft went at the 203, directly behind Christian Watson. If you want to take Christian Watson over Sky Moore, you can easily do that. I mean, I'm not going to fault anybody when they have comparable profiles, and at the same time with Christian Watson, he finds himself in the best landing spot possible. So if you want to take Watson over Sky Moore, you do you. You have Desmond Ridder going over Sky Moore in this draft. That can't happen now. There's a 0% chance you can take Desmond Ridder over Sky Moore. He's going to jump Desmond Ridder. He has to jump Isaiah Spiller as well. Unless we get a crazy landing spot for Isaiah Spiller, I think you have to take Sky Moore over him. He jumps George Pickens. George Pickens going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're unsure of the passing volume in the offense. He's competing for targets with Deontay Johnson, who over the past 2 seasons is closing in on 10 targets per game. So he jumps George Pickens. I think the wide receivers that you have to rank over Sky Moore now, the only players that you have to rank over Sky Moore: Treylon Burks, Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jameson Williams. I think those 5 options, you have to rank them over Sky Moore. From there, if you wanted to talk yourself in to potentially taking Sky Moore over Jahan Dotson, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it because with Sky Moore, he grades out higher in our wide receiver prospect model. I need to plug in the draft capital and actually update that. They're going to be comparable with their prospect grades, but the difference is Sky Moore just finds himself in quite possibly a top 3 passing offense in the NFL compared to Jahan Dotson finding himself in a bottom 10 passing offense in the NFL, competing for targets with Terry McLaurin. So I think if you wanted to take Sky Moore over Christian Watson, if you wanted to take Sky Moore over Jahan Dotson, you can do that. I'm not going to argue with you. I think it's almost up to you. Obviously, you're taking Sky Moore over Alec Pierce. You're taking him over John Mechie. You're taking him over Wan'Dale Robinson, just to mention a couple of the players that were drafted ahead of him in the NFL draft that aren't going to hold the light to his dynasty value. But I think that should be it. We got a lot of live streams to go through and bust out right now. I believe we'll talk about George Pickens next, but please go down there, drop a like on this stream. Please drop a like if you're enjoying me making these. If not, hell, you don't have to watch them, but please drop that like if you are enjoying these, and we'll head right over to George Pickens.